Hi, you guys. Welcome back to another Ace of Cups podcast after a long time. And I'm so excited to be back. Today's episode is going to be a little bit of a soft subject, a tender subject, I would like to say. And it's funny because I actually didn't plan on this being my first episode back at all. I actually had so many other ideas and so many other things that I wanted to talk about instead. But when I decided to film today, the overwhelming idea of, okay, this needs to be what we talk about today just came over me like a wave. And it's what was on my heart to share. And I don't even know if I'm actually prepared to share it, but I'm going to put it out there regardless. I do believe everything happens for a reason. And if there's anyone at all that needs to hear this today, I am obedient and I'm going to put it out there. Okay. So today we're going to talk about grief, mental health, and suicide. So trigger warning that I'm going to insert here. If you feel that you're not prepared to listen to very sensitive topics, again, surrounding all of the things that I just mentioned, please do not tune in to today's episode. You are more than welcome to hang around for the daily tarot poll that I'm going to do just a little few seconds here. But if you feel like you really cannot handle those subjects, please don't force yourself to say it's okay. It's okay to just go away. It's okay to just go on to the next piece of content that reaches you today, okay? Or even better, go for a walk, go do something that you love to do, go read a book, go watch your favorite show, go take a bath, a shower, go do something that makes you feel like the amazing person that you are. So having gotten that out of the way, we're going to talk about my dad's suicide, which is something that's still super raw to talk about, and I am honestly still uncomfortable even saying out loud. And the reason that I want to talk about it is because obviously so many people go through the same thing, and I feel like so many people go through it in silence. And it's like, no matter how progressive the world is and how much we talk about mental health, but I still feel like the subject of suicide or parents that go through mental health issues, it's something that's still so surrounded by shame and this feeling of it being taboo. Honestly, it's something that I myself felt such shame around sharing for such a long time. And it's a different kind of shame because it's the kind of shame that is rooted in, what are people going to think of me once they know? The idea in talking about this today is I kind of wanted to rip the band-aid off, and I wanted to be something that's kind of out there, and it's something that people can relate to or find inspiration in or find strength in, or just even if you find it a little bit cathartic to what you are currently going through in your life. We're going to talk about how such a huge loss affected me, how it showed up in so many ways that were unhealthy, how it transcended what I see as love, how it affected my attachment styles, the fears that it brought up, okay? And of course, the journey to healing all of that, which I feel like is a lifelong journey. And I need my coffee. Grief truly is something that never really leaves. I feel like it's a crack or a stain on the soul forever, but there is a certain amount of light that can come from that wound, and hopefully in today's episode you can let a little bit of that light in. Okay, so before we get into the super dark and emotional stuff, and do a daily tarot poll. If you guys don't like tarot, if you think it's demonic or blah 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 blah, blah whatever, please go watch something else. That's okay, you don't need to say it. Let's go ahead and see what the card of the day is. Okay, 7 of Cups. This is actually really interesting. Okay, this to me is the element of surprise, the illusion, the fantasy, opportunities, okay, choices and options that are coming in right now. I feel like this card really is cutting through the nitty-gritty, cutting through the illusion, cutting through the fantasy, and making a choice that feels deep and authentic and raw and aligned. So it's not choosing what looks good. It's not choosing what you think will look good. It's not choosing out of vanity, or it's not choosing out of greed, but it's choosing out of divine alignment. And I actually think that it's really funny that this came out, especially because of what I said in the beginning. So maybe this is for you guys as well, right? What's the choices that you make? What are they rooted in? Are they rooted in greed? Are they rooted in vanity? Are they rooted in acceptance or validation? Are they rooted in lust? Are they rooted in ego? Okay. Or are they rooted in divine alignment? So choose wisely. That's literally the message of this card. Okay. Let's get into the episode. Okay. So the first thing I really want to talk about was obviously how the grief affected me and what I want to say, like how I reacted in the moment. So the first thing that really cut me deep, my father watching, you know, the epitome of what was to me discipline and safety and that masculine energy in my life go through such difficult mental health challenges, and there not being a lot of support or a lot of knowledge that we even had as a family to support him through any of that. And it was really difficult because one of the pillars of my pain, I would like to say, was guilt. A lot of guilt that I felt for not being able to do more, for not being able to help, for not being able to be a source of support at that time. Mind you, I was 16 at the time. So did I have the tools to even help through something like that? Absolutely not. And I don't think anyone is ever... I feel like those moments really catch you off guard in life. And I was always a really strong person. I was always a super resilient person. I was always emotionally intelligent, I feel like I would like to say. But in that moment, I had no way to be any of that, because what was at the forefront was the pain that I was feeling and the having to endure and watch something like that. Watching how a parent's mind can crumble and break, and so much of their joy, their personality being fractured down to just heartbreak is completely disheartening. And it's really difficult to watch, especially through the eyes of a child, where in that moment, you're supposed to be the one that's protected and cared for. There was nothing really that I could do about it at that time, but be there for, you know, my other family members. And it's one of those things where you kind of have to just let it happen, and you kind of have no choice but to just watch something unravel. And so in that moment, what my I guess defense or protectiveness over myself was to be cold and super detached. I remember that I didn't even cry. I did not even cry when I found out that he had passed, because so much had led up to that, and it was almost like something I was expecting to happen at that point. I remember thinking, like, what is wrong with me? Like, my father just died. I should be in shambles. I should be sobbing, crying. Like, I should be feeling this pain. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think it took me a week to even shed a tear, you guys. And I remember I didn't even stop going to school. I still kept going to school. I still kept showing up. My grades went down like a mother effer. I remember, and I was literally like in junior year into senior year. So it was a really, really important year. I also was the one that like had to break the news to my teachers. I don't think it's something that my mom even like comprehended at the time, or something that she like, you know, she was going through her own pain, through her own grief. And that's another way that I acted in my grief, is that I became kind of like the emotionally resilient one, where I wasn't really allowed to, I felt, okay, I'm not saying that no one allowed me to, but I felt like I wasn't allowed to actually process the grief. I just had to keep going. And then the thing that probably broke me the most, and again, this is like no shame to my family, nothing like that. I adore my family completely. But one of the things that was the most heartbreaking was that nobody talked about it. I swear to God. After his passing, after his mental health struggles, it became such, I feel like everyone was kind of encompassed by the shame of it. So no one talked about it. Okay. That grief was never properly processed. And I feel like it alienated everyone from each other at that time, which was a time that we were supposed to be all kind of like close, you know, and relying on each other. And I feel like that's something a lot of you guys can relate to, especially if you grew up in a home where emotions and being vulnerable is not really something that's like a proud thing or something empowering, right? It's seen as like, you're not strong, right? You need to be strong. You can't be weak. That kind of environment. And I feel like a lot of you guys can relate to that. I feel like especially Latino household is like, you're not allowed to be sad. You're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to feel this way. Like, I feel like it's such a pattern of not processing and of not feeling, and it's just showing up and doing what you got to do. And I feel like it's something that's so perpetuated in like Latino households. It's just like, nobody talk about your feelings, nobody talk about your sadness. Depression doesn't exist. Just everyone go in the room, don't talk about it, it'll pass. Like, you'll get over it. Like, that's literally the vibe. And with such a painful situation, I feel like that approach to emotional pain was catastrophic. Okay, catastrophic. And I acted out in so many ways, you guys. Like, I have like no shame in saying I acted out in so many ways. I remember I want to say exactly about a month and a half after his passing, I started dating someone significantly older than me. And this is really where that abandonment wound came into play, which is what I want to tie this into, because this loss, and I feel like a lot of losses, I feel like a lot of people can relate to this, not just if you lose a father physically, but if you don't have that masculine presence, or even if you have their presence in your life, if it's not an emotionally available one. And same thing with your mother, right? It can create this energy of codependence and this energy of fear of abandonment, because your parent, that was your source of safety, your source of security, and it just is not there. You're not able to find that sense of security. So your brain therefore goes, this is terrifying. I have to do anything possible at all to avoid feeling abandoned. That's kind of how I took it. When I was dating that person that was significantly older than me at the time, obviously, I saw no wrong in it whatsoever. And I attached, and I have no shame in saying this, you guys, okay? Because this was literally a month after my dad's passing. Like, I was going through it, okay? I attached to that mother effer. Like, I've never attached to anything in my life. And if you guys, like, hear me laughing, it's because I've truly like made my peace with this, and it's something that I can kind of look back at and just think about, like, oh my God, you were so silly, girl, but I understand you and I am empathetic for you and I love that version of you regardless. I attached to that mother effer like there was no tomorrow. I remember that, like, I laid eyes on him. I talked to him very briefly, and I remember I went back to my house and I was crying. And I swear to God, you guys, I was crying, bawling my eyes out, because I told myself at the time, I love this person so much. Like, I just don't know why I love them so much. I just don't know why I love them so much. And that was really the spark of that anxious, like, attachment wound. I hadn't even properly processed the grief of my father passing, the abandonment, the loss of that. And my psyche, I want to say, immediately jumped to, I'm going to attach to this person. I'm going to put them in the place of my sense of security. And if I don't have this thing, I am just absolutely broken and done for. Okay, so I just want to put that out there. If you guys feel that way about anyone, I promise you, it's most likely 99% of the time an attachment wound. Like, if you haven't had any real time to actually form a connection or get to know a person, and you feel that strong of an attachment to them, that like unhealthy attachment where you feel like if they go away, you're just going to completely break apart, that, I promise you, 99% of the time is an abandonment wound and an anxious attachment style, which is something that I will literally talk about and advocate for, I guess. Not advocate for, but it's something that I would talk about for forever, because I feel like so many of us deal with it. But in that moment, that I pinpointed that person as my sense of security. And of course, that person was extremely emotionally unavailable and avoidant. As the cookie crumbles, I don't know, like, that's usually how it goes. That in itself was like its own little disaster. I became so distracted, right, by dealing with that relationship and that dynamic, that I again had no time at all to process my grief. Plus, my family wasn't really talking about it either, so I just pushed it down, shoved it away, shoved it away, shoved it away. Another way that this came out, okay, I started overeating like crazy. And I feel like this is something that's not talked about enough with people that go through emotional pain, whether that's grief, any kind of trauma, heartbreak, whatever it is. Food is a source of emotional safety. Food is the way that your body creates safety. And in that moment, I literally started eating like there was no tomorrow. I am truly not kidding you guys. Like, I would eat an entire medium pizza, wings, like I would eat everything under the sun. I would be eating like a linebacker. That's literally how I was eating. And again, no shame to that version of myself. I love her dearly, but that I was just looking for safety, and everything outside of me. I even moved away, right? I shoved down that pain for as long as I possibly could. I became severely, I want to say, depressed and numb, and I truly had no one that I could talk to about it, because I felt like I was making everyone uncomfortable by talking about it. I remember the couple of instances that I tried to bring it up to my friend at the time. It was just, it just felt so uncomfortable. Then I like low-key started trauma dumping. I remember like a few times that I was at work, and this was like years, like probably 3 or 4 years after he passed, but I still hadn't like dealt with it. I remember that I kind of like started trauma dumping on people, and I would just like blurt it out at like random moments, and everyone would kind of be like, what the heck? And the reason I'm pointing all of this out is because I want you guys to understand that who you are when you're going through pain doesn't define you, and it can change. Another way that my grief, or I guess my suppressed grief, came out was I was just a nasty person. Like, I'm talking about a nasty person. Like, I was constantly rude. I would go from 0 to 100 real quick. The time that it took for me to get severely irritated and aggravated was very, very short, and I became super materialistic, superficial as well. Thank God I got over that. I still am a little bit materialistic, but not to the extent that I was back then. I remember I would also be super, super defensive. So any connection that tried to come into my life, or any friendship that tried to come into my life, I feel like I self-sabotaged it by just being a bitch. And it was really difficult. I feel like I also became super distant from my family. Anytime that I was around my family, I felt like there was just this big like cloud over, like this big elephant in the room, and no one's talking about it. And that really bothered me, and it started to become like resentment. I started to resent like even being around my family. So obviously years go by. So the moment when it really all came crashing down on me, I remember vividly, and I was sitting on the balcony of my like then apartment. I was sitting on the balcony, and I was alone. I remember I was alone, and I was in a relationship at the time. I never really stopped being in a relationship, you guys. Like, that's another thing. Like, right after that grief, like, I went into that relationship with that person that was older than me, then another relationship, and it just never stopped. It just never stopped. I'm telling you, that was such a band-aid. I was in a relationship at the time when I was sitting on the balcony, okay? And like a wave, it just came crashing down on me. This overwhelming feeling of like, I need to be alone. And I went to great lengths to make sure that I was alone, okay? I decided to live alone. Eventually, me and my boyfriend at the time broke up, and I ended up back at my mother's house, okay? With like nothing, literally with nothing, which was kind of like my dark bottom, rock bottom moment. But it was in that moment that I really healed, and I kind of had no choice but to. I feel like God really worked out some kinks, and he made everything in my life fall apart. Like, I'm talking about, like, I moved out of my apartment. I quit my job. I lost my relationship. I had no money, no job, no nothing. And I was back at my mom's house where it all kind of started. Okay. So I literally had no choice in that moment but to sit my butt down and do the healing. It's also something that I realized I had to do alone, because it kind of hit me like, no one's ever gonna come help me with this. No one's ever going to come and hold my hand and be like, Yuli, let's get through this together. Like, no one's going to come and do that. So I have to do it for myself. And that gave me an insane amount of strength, first of all, but it also allowed me to just break. I remember I just allowed myself to break. A big part of the armor that I had put on was like, I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to be the best at everything. I'm going to achieve everything. I'm going to have all these things and I'm going to live this. I built such a strong armor around me based on so many external like validation factors, materialistic things, the job that I had, the career that I had, the people that I like was around. Like, so much of it was based on this huge like armor and this huge like illusion, let's just say. And none of it was really deeply fulfilling. None of it was real or authentic to me. And also, that's reminding me of the card that we pulled. And looking back on it, I honestly couldn't have asked for anything better to happen. That was the best thing that could have happened to me. And in that moment, I felt like my life was falling up, like my life was in complete shambles and my life was just over, and I didn't know how I was going to get out of that moment. But something really fortified me, something really, really strengthened me. And it was the fact that I had the power to change my life. In that little void of healing, and I remember being in my mom's room, and I started like a maniac, like an absolute maniac, working through all my fears, working through all my grief. And this was before I even started doing therapy. I actually did a lot of the healing work on my own. One of the biggest fears that I had to face was my fear of going crazy, okay, of losing the grip that I had on my mental health. And I think because watching someone so close to me go through something so similar, and not just my dad, I actually had a lot of people around me since very little that dealt with pain, that dealt with that kind of pain, that dealt with mental health issues, that dealt with suicidal thoughts, that dealt with just depression. I want to say like that dealt with depression, that dealt with self-esteem, and I'm talking about like friends, people that I dated. I remember like one of my younger friends in like middle school, I remember I would check her wrists from time to time to make sure that she wasn't actually like hurting herself. So I always felt like I was kind of followed by it, like low key. And I decided in that moment, I was like, okay, well, this is happening for a reason. And one of the biggest things that really got to me was the fear of losing my mind, the fear of having bad mental health, of losing my sanity, my peace. And oh my God, that's one of the worst fears to get through and one of the worst fears to overcome, because I felt like I was on the edge of insanity constantly. And coincidentally, that was also around the time that I discovered tarot and that I got into tarot. And I remember I had to just put it away and stop for a while, because I truly felt like it wasn't going to help me gain my sanity, because I was so obsessed with it. Thankfully, I like to say that I'm a super self-aware person, so I could recognize that in myself, like, okay, I'm getting a little bit too out of hand, too obsessed with this, I'm going to put it away. It took me a long time to overcome that fear of like losing my mind and going crazy. But what I realized sitting in that fear, I almost told myself, I kid you not, I literally sat there and I told myself, and if you do what? I remember just sitting there telling myself, if you do lose your mind, if you do go crazy, what? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. Like, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And what if it happened, right? There's no control that you have over that. And a big part of that was releasing control and just living in the moment instead of worrying about the future. But another thing that it really taught me was to really, 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 really value mental health, my emotional processing, and my independence. Okay, one of the things that really struck me in watching my dad go through something like that, the catalyst to my father's like mental health problems was my mom basically asking him for a divorce. And that really struck in me this desire to not ever attach myself so heavily to a partner, where I feel like if I lose that partner, I'm losing a part of myself, and I want to DIE. And that's actually something that I felt when my then partner like broke up with me at the time. I felt completely shattered. I felt like I had literally no reason to live. And in that moment, when I thought that, I was like, oh no. I was like, oh no. I was like, oh no, 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 no. I was like, oh no, no. I am never going to let anyone outside of me determine the fate of my life. And that is something I feel like a lot of people also struggle with. We become so like attached, like negative. Not, I don't even want to say, it's so beautiful to be in a relationship and to be in a marriage and to have family and to have that bond, but it's really important, and it's a really thin line from crossing from connection into attachment, into severe attachment. And everything is always going to hurt. Losses are always going to hurt. Breakups are always going to hurt, but it should never make you feel like you are losing yourself. And I always think to myself, right, if my father had the right friendships, if he had his own separate life, if he took care of himself, if he loved himself outside of that relationship, I promise you the whole course of that probably would have happened. I imagine he probably would have, of course, been broken. He would have dealt with it. He would have grieved, and then he would have moved on, and he would have been happy. So a lot of this is me advocating for. So a reason I want to talk about this is because it's so important. It's so freaking important, especially for men, especially for everyone. But I feel like men in particular have a hard time dealing with pain. 80% of the suicides that occur in the US are by men, okay? And I feel like it's because men were always taught to be strong and to not break and to not deal and to not be emotional and to not do any of that, right? Don't cry. You have to be strong. What that does is that when a man goes through an extremely traumatic event or something really, really painful, they don't know how to deal with it. That's why it's so important for me. And I tell this to everyone in my life, for you to have your own life, your own independent self, and your own aspirations, your own dreams, your own goals, your own beautiful life outside of a partner, outside of a relationship. It's okay to be connected, and it's even okay to be enmeshed to a certain level, but you have to have that independence. You have to have your own sense of self. I feel like obviously most of the times it probably doesn't lead to suicide, but how many times does it? Think about how many times enmeshment of a relationship like that actually does lead to heartbreaking things like this. And it's such an easy fix. I feel like a lot of what we come to this earth to experience is ourselves and our own soul and our own beauty that we have within. And so much of it is lost in trying to find that love and that beauty in outside things, when the journey, right? The reason that we come to this world is to really get to know ourselves and to give ourselves all the experiences that accumulate into a beautiful soul and a beautiful amount of fulfillment. So yes, it was deeply heartbreaking. It completely changed me. Mind you, it's taken me literally 8 years to be able to talk about this to you guys. So it's a never-ending journey. I never want to be in that position where if I lose the love of my life, I feel like I'm completely shattered and I'm broken and I'm losing myself, which is why I strive so strongly to have my own goals, my own interests, my own dreams, my own empire, my own life, my own everything outside of my partner, outside of my relationship. And I feel like that's something absolutely everyone should strive for. You are you. At the end of the day, you are you. You're not just a husband or just a partner or just a father or just a brother. You are a person with so many interests, so many dreams, so many aspirations, so many feelings, and you deserve to just be you. You deserve to just be known as you. Also made me appreciate life and peace, and it made me strive to take care of myself and love myself and be better with my mental health and with my own wellness journey every day a little bit more and more. Obviously, I'm not always perfect. I don't think anyone is. But if there is literally just one thing that you can do for yourself on a daily basis that's going to help you get closer to that self-fulfillment within, where you feel like you're okay on your own and you don't really need anything or anyone outside of you. That's a beautiful thing. For a lot of us, that's like as simple as like picking up hobbies, doing things that you're passionate about, reconnecting with your inner child, going after something that you really didn't ever want to go after, changing your appearance, changing your look, trying different styles, just experiencing life to the fullest and letting your soul fully enjoy life to the fullest, I feel like is the vibe. That's really what I wanted to talk about today. I know this was a little bit dark, but also a little bit light as well. And if there's anything that I want you guys to take away from this, is that mental health is so important, yes, but self-love and independence is probably the most important and beautiful thing that you can do for yourself, because it's not about not ever depending on anyone or not forming connections or not being able to rely on loved ones, but it's also having the ability for you to do that within yourself. It's okay to rely on others and depend on others, but also being able to do that for yourself is such a beautiful and powerful thing. This episode was super raw, you guys. I honestly didn't even plan it. I didn't even know how I was going to talk about this when I sat down, but I just knew that I had to do it for whatever reason. Maybe it's something I'll talk about again, maybe not. If you guys are listening to this right now and you're going through some kind of grief, if you're going through some kind of loss, if you're going through some kind of heartbreak, it's understanding that it's not the end, it's just an ending, and it's just a cycle coming to a close, and it doesn't determine the rest of your life. It doesn't determine the next chapter of your life. And I almost feel like using that as an affirmation will be beautiful. Like, this does not determine my next chapter. There is so much life ahead of you still. There's so much for you to venture out there into. You can literally create anything that you put your mind to starting today. So I feel like positive thinking, I feel like really shifting your thoughts and understanding that anything that falls apart is because something is going to be gained from it as well. God is not going to take anything from you just to take it away from you. There's always something more that's going to come from it. And I want you guys to take that with you. If you guys ever have any kind of loss or any kind of heartbreak, it's understanding this is happening because I'm supposed to gain something from it. Maybe you don't know what that is yet, and that's completely fine, but it's understanding that is not the end. It's just an ending. And also that it's not going to take anything from you, but rather it's going to add to you, okay? That's where I'm going to leave this episode, you guys. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for listening. I know this is like a little bit of a sensitive one. I will be back next week. Okay, period. I'll be back next week for another episode. I love you guys so much. I hope you guys have a beautiful day. You're strong, you're beautiful, you're powerful, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.